From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Governor Gina Raimondo's chief of staff comes to Rhode Island by way of Maryland, and now he has a front row seat to the blood sport known as Ocean State politics. Looking back at the first 9 months of the Raimondo administration and ahead, including a potentially retooled tolling plan, new efforts to spur the economy, and the Paw Sox. Our guest on the first half of Newsmakers, Raimondo Administration Chief of Staff, Stephen Neuman. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. On the second half of the program, a reporters roundtable talking about this week in news. Joining me on the panel, as always, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. Good morning, everyone. Steve, great to have you on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
You are the Chief of Staff for Governor Raimondo, or as I like to say, the man behind the curtain. And we're going to try and pull that curtain back today. Before we get into specific policy issues and proposals here, I want to take a step back. As I pointed out in the open of the program here, you've got the first 9 months of the Raimondo administration under the belt. How do you think it's gone so far? What's worked in your opinion? What hasn't?
Well, thanks. Let me start by acknowledging that as we tape today, it's 9/11. So, of course, the memories of this awful day are fresh in everybody's minds and hearts. And there was a very moving ceremony in the State House this morning. And so it's just, obviously, we still have lots of people in harm's way. And, in fact, the family of First Sergeant McKenna were in the State House this week as we acknowledged and celebrated his bravery and dedication and heroism to our country. So just a mention of that at the outset. But listen, thank you for having me. And you know, we're very excited about how things are going so far. And listen, the principal focus of Governor Raimondo's efforts in Rhode Island is helping get people back to work, helping spur our economy, and making sure that everybody can make it in Rhode Island. And we've tried to focus on three main buckets. We want to help give people, make the education system better. We want to work on skills and job training. And we want to make this a more attractive place for companies to do business. And we think we've made some pretty significant progress on all three of those buckets. So look, there's a lot of work left to do, but we're excited about the turnaround that's underway.
Any roadblocks that you've hit, and that might actually be a pun for something that we want to talk about coming up, but anything take you by surprise or not go exactly the way you wanted it to go?
Well, look, I think there are things not yet accomplished, and so plenty of work left to do. You know, when the governor came in, one of the things she talked about is that we're ranked 50th out of 50 states in bridge quality, and that's by according to the Federal Department of Transportation and according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And so one of the things that we want to do is look for a way to invest more to put people back to work, rebuilding our roads and rebuilding our bridges. It's something we desperately need, and that's something we haven't yet accomplished.
Let's talk about road work, since you brought it up, and I want to know where that stands and you know, what's going to happen next in that. But just the first question on that for me is, did it catch you in the governor's office by surprise when House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello began voicing concerns about the tolling plan? Did you feel like you had buy-in from his office before holding that big press conference under the crumbling bridge?
Let me say, I continue to think we have buy-in from the Speaker and from the Senate President. I think everybody acknowledges that we have to do something to invest more in our roads and in our bridges. And it's a safety issue, it's an economic development issue, and it's an issue about putting people back to work. So, look, the politics of procrastination simply don't work anymore, and we've got a problem that has been ignored for too long, and we need to address it. So I continue to think that the Speaker and the Senate President are bought in on that. I think it's customary in the legislative process that there are changes, there are improvements, there are compromises, and so this is a normal part of that process, and it's going to play out. And we're excited about getting a final bill on the governor's desk that she can sign.
But did it catch you by surprise? I know it caught the Senate President a little by surprise. She said that on this program. How about the governor's office?
You know, I try never to be surprised by twists and turns, But look, I think that there continues to be a commitment on the part of the Speaker, a commitment on the part of legislative leaders and rank and file members to try and do something about this really significant problem we have. And so I think we're looking for a solution that's going to help some of these commercial trucks pay more of their fair share, help put construction workers back to work, and take care of this problem that has been unaddressed for too long.
Speaker Mattiello said on this show, he said it elsewhere, that he wanted to find a revised version of the proposal that he could bring forward maybe later this month or in October in a special session. Where do things stand with revising roadworks in a way that you can get the House to bring it to the floor and hopefully, from your perspective, get it passed?
Well, as far as timing goes, I'll leave that to the presiding officers. They're the ones who make decisions about when the General Assembly is going to come back and consider this, that, or the other. We have continued to have robust discussions with legislative leaders throughout the summer about the roadworks proposal, and we remain optimistic. And so we're continuing to listen, and if there are improvements, additional improvements, we're obviously open to those. But the bottom line is we think that we need a proposal sooner rather than later, because the truth is that the longer we wait, the more expensive this problem becomes. And we continue to have bridges deteriorate, and we have to put Band-Aids on them. That costs money. The longer we wait, the more materials become more expensive. So, for all sorts of reasons, delay is not our friend. And, we obviously hope to get something done as soon as possible on this, and we're going to keep working constructively with our partners in the General Assembly on that.
Our guest is Steve Neuman, Chief of Staff for Governor Gina Raimondo. Just to boil it down, it sounds like any proposal, any changes that happen, just to cut to it, will still include tolling. Is that accurate to say?
Well, from our perspective, we think it's important for these commercial trucks to pay their fair share. There are commercial trucks paying part of the share of road construction in states all the way from Maryland to Maine. And so I think Rhode Island's a bit of an outlier there. And we know that these commercial trucks do a significant portion of the vehicle-caused damage to our roads and bridges. And so we think it makes sense to ask them to do a little bit more. And so we do think that's an important component. And I think we're confident that our partners in the General Assembly agree with that.
We have to ask about the controversial hiring of newly retired State Rep Don Lally to a state job. Rhode Island has a revolving door law. It was put in place to prevent lawmakers, in most cases, from getting a state job within a year. We've seen other people, Richard Leach, Brian Stern, ask for advisory opinions from the Ethics Commission if this was allowed. Lally didn't. Your office didn't. Why didn't you go to the Ethics Commission to see if this was okay?
Well, look, we think the law is clear on this, and there's an exception, and we care about the rules and follow the rules, and there's an exception that allows governors to hire people on their staffs. He serves at the pleasure of the governor in a senior role, and so we thought the law is clear on that. What I think is really important about this is to take a step back and say that this is, what Don is doing is right in the strike zone of what this administration is focused on, which is making it easier for companies to do business in Rhode Island. Because we want to attract new companies to come and put people to work in Rhode Island, and we want to encourage our existing businesses to grow and expand here. And part of the way we need to do that is by making this a more business-friendly place.
Speaker Mattiello said he recommended Lally for the job. Whose idea was it originally to approach him?
I don't remember whose idea it was originally, but we'd spoken to Don about it, spoke to the Speaker about it, and again, he is doing a great job, and we're going to hold him accountable for the work that we've asked him to do. He serves at the pleasure of the governor, and just like everybody else, if he doesn't continue to do a good job, we'll find somebody who will.
But this is a governor who always says Brown has an I know a guy culture. We can't have that. Well, Don Lally knows all the guys, including the Speaker of the House. Do you see why this would smell bad to the average Rhode Islander?
Listen, I understand why I understand how Rhode Island is and understand how folks may view things, but I do think that this is not a a guy administration. You got a chief of staff come in from Maryland. Our Secretary of Commerce, one of the key people in our administration, has come from Connecticut and New York and New Jersey. We have a new education commissioner from New York, our director of labor and training from Maryland. So, look, we've tried to bring in a lot of fresh perspectives, but we also have some folks with some real Rhode Island experience, like Secretary Roberts at EOHHS and Mike DBAs at the Department of Administration. So what we've tried to do is set clear expectations for our folks and understand that we're going to hold people accountable. We're going to try and reward people when they do well, and we're going to hold them accountable when they fall short.
Now that there's been some pushback on this, though, it is up to the employee to seek the advisory opinion. As you heard from Ted, there was a number of people that have done that in the past. Will you now look to have that happen? Will you ask Don Lally to approach the Ethics Commission for an advisory opinion?
Look, we think the law is clear here, and we think we've followed the rules.
So that is a definite no.
So I don't think that that's necessary at this point. But the bottom line is what we're focused on is trying to improve this business environment. And that's what Don's focused on, is trying to make this a more business-friendly culture, trying to change the attitude of government so it's a little more customer service-oriented. And so there's a lot of work that goes into changing that culture, changing that environment, and that's what we're going to stay focused on, is trying to make this a place where businesses want to invest, businesses want to grow.
Let's talk about the PawSox. Give us the latest on the PawSox proposal. It seems to me like 2 weeks ago, the proposal to build the stadium on 195 land was taking on water. What's the percentage chance, Steve, if you will, that the stadium is built in Providence on 195 land now?
I'll leave the odds makers to set the odds, but I'll say this, that what the governor has said from the start is that all else being equal, we very much want to keep the PawSox in Rhode Island. And so when the team got some new owners, we originally talked to them and expressed our interest in having the team stay in Pawtucket. The team wasn't interested in that. They said Pawtucket was off the table, and they wanted to look at the 195 land. I think, there's been some pretty serious complications on the 195 land that have, and the governor's been saying for weeks that there are a bunch of stakeholders that would have to be engaged and be on board on that before any proposal on the 195 land could move forward. So I do think that there are some challenges on the 195 land, but from our perspective, we want to keep the PawSox in Rhode Island, and if we're going to do anything to build any new stadium in Providence or anywhere else, I think what the keys are number one, making sure that there's a fair deal, that it's fair and good for the taxpayers, and that the owners would pay their fair share. But I do think there have been some setbacks on the 195 land, and it remains to be seen what the owners are going to do, whether they want to take a fresh look at Pawtucket or think about other sites.
Is there a renegotiated deal that senior people on both sides have signed off on that just hasn't been unveiled yet?
No. There have been some discussions and progress has been made, but there is no deal. And as we've been saying, one of the reasons for that is we've known that there's all these other pieces that had to fall into place. The City of Providence, Brown, the Federal Highway Administration, and others. And so, all those are details that needed to be sorted out before any new ballpark could move forward.
The speaker said that there likely wouldn't be a fall session on PawSox, which really tells you the timing of it. But when do you anticipate to see a deal come forward, if at all?
Well, I think that the first question is whether or not there will be, and I think you pointed out in your intro on this topic that there have been some new challenges on the 195 land, and so I think it remains to be seen what the team's going to want to do, whether they're going to want to try and continue to move forward despite some of the additional hurdles there, or whether they're going to look for a new site. And so, we of course would welcome them to take a fresh look at Pawtucket, and if they want to think about a different alternative somewhere in Rhode Island, we'd like to continue to be engaged with them, staying true to those central principles, which is we need a deal, if there is one, that's fair to the citizens and where the owners pay their fair share.
Do you have any indication that they'd want to stay in Pawtucket? I mean, everything they have said up to this point that is off the table.
They have said that, and they've been very clear about that. But from our perspective, if their plans change on the 195 land, we'd of course encourage them to take a fresh look at that.
Okay. One of the governor's big first-year wins you all were very excited about was getting all those new economic development incentives put into the state budget. Now that they are enshrined in law, they're in the hands of your staff. Are they having an impact? Are they helping you attract business? What's the reaction to them?
Thank you. We're, as I said, our principal focus is reinvigorating this economy, putting people back to work, and making sure that everybody can make it in Rhode Island. And so, some of the things we've done are we eliminated the commercial sales tax on energy to make it easier to do business. We've reduced taxes on small businesses by lowering the corporate minimum tax. We're working every day to try and make this a more business-friendly place in terms of regulations.
Rhode Island,
Absolutely.
other incentive programs.
I'm sorry for my throat-clearing start there. Yes, and so, but one of the pieces is that, look, lots of the other states, both in our area and around the country, have economic development tools at their disposal, which they can use to help bring companies into their states. And Rhode Island was sort of on the sidelines there. And so, yes, we have worked with the General Assembly and partnered with them, and we have a new suite of tools that can help us have proactive discussions with businesses to try and encourage them to come and invest and put people to work here in Rhode Island. And so we have begun to have very aggressive discussions with lots of different businesses. And, that is the tools just came into place in July, and so these discussions take time, and we have to bait a lot of hooks in the hope that we find folks willing to come here. But we've received some very enthusiastic receptions from businesses out of state that we've talked to that have said, "Wow, you guys really are doing some impressive things in Rhode Island." And look, there's a lot of things about Rhode Island that make this an attractive place to do business. We've got Brown University here, we've got RISD, we've got URI and other great universities. We got Quonset at Deepwater Port. We're expanding the airport. We're centrally located. We're closer to Boston basically than San Francisco is to Palo Alto. Centrally located to New York. So look, there's a lot of things that we can use to try and attract businesses to come here, and we're having very aggressive discussions.
Are you finding that there's a 38 Studios hangover, though, to the economic development proposals that the Raimondo administration has? Has that been hampering to you? You're coming from Maryland and from the outside, and you've been here for 9 months. Are you experiencing that?
There's no question that 38 Studios looms large in the psyche of the citizens of Rhode Island, and frankly, I understand that. And I think everybody in the Raimondo administration understands it and takes it very seriously. But at the same time, 9 out of 12 months in 2014, Rhode Island was ranked last in the country in unemployment. And so I think everybody who lives in Rhode Island understands that we need to take aggressive action to try and get this economy going again. And so that's the focus of the Raimondo administration. And there have been mistakes made in the past, and we're going to learn from those mistakes. We're going to do things differently. We're going to do things better. But we are nevertheless going to be very aggressive in trying to get companies to invest here and put people to work.
The judge handling the 38 Studios lawsuit will hear objections to the release of material next week from anyone who wants some stuff to remain sealed. The state, through the Commerce Corporation, is the plaintiff. Is the state going to ask for anything to be held back?
Not that I'm aware of at this moment. So I'd hate to say 100% no until I get a update from the lawyers, but nobody's talked to me about that. I'm not aware of that. And look, it was the Commerce Corporation in the Raimondo administration as the plaintiff that made the motion that's kind of got this ball rolling to have the documents unsealed. And we think that's important. We think that transparency here is very important. And I think that people are gonna get a look at a more detailed look at what exactly went on.
And have you been briefed on what to expect in the documents by Max Wistow, who is the attorney for the state?
We have talked to Max about some of the settlement discussions that have been going on. We've talked about the fact that the document release is happening. I haven't had a specific briefing about what's in the documents. We've had some casual conversations with him and others, so I do have some sense, and obviously there's going to be, I think a lot of people taking a hard look at some of the mistakes that were made. But one of the things I'd say is I'd remind you that Governor Raimondo, then a private citizen working in the investment business, warned about some of the exact consequences that we might see here. And so I think that she definitely does want to take a very different approach to how we attract businesses to come and invest here.
You're a St. Louis Rams fan. How is it living in Patriots country?
Well, I did watch the game last night. I wish Gronk was on my fantasy team. That guy's a monster. But look, I think it makes it a little easier that the Patriots beat the Rams in the Super Bowl in, 2001?
Yes.
Yeah. So nobody's too mad at me about that. And of course, the Red Sox beat the Cardinals twice in World Series in recent years. So
very diplomatic answer. Well done. All right, Steve Neuman, Chief of Staff for Governor Gina Raimondo, thank you very much for joining us on the program. We hope to have you back sometime soon.
This was my first television interview, so I appreciate you guys having me, and it was a pleasure to be with you, and hope to be able to come back.
Well, thanks for making it Newsmakers to do that. When we come back this week in news with a Reporters Roundtable, stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the second half, as he was here on the first half, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. We're talking about this week in news for Reporters Roundtable. So, Ted, you heard Steve Neuman, Chief of Staff for Governor Gina Raimondo, in the first half. I mean, he was really poo-pooing this pushback on Don Lally, former state representative, getting a job in the Raimondo administration. Why is it important?
Well, I think he did his job. He advocated for their position on it, but I think there's a couple reasons that this stuck out to people. One is, Gina Raimondo's brand in politics has always been, I'm different. I don't do the things other Rhode Island politicians do. And, there's a reason there are rules in place about state lawmakers getting a job within a year. People felt that was a real problem. And there's been a history of political folks getting jobs that people felt, weren't deserved. They got it too easily, whatever. And so finding out that a guy who got reelected unopposed a few months later suddenly resigns, and then with the recommendation of Speaker Mattiello is hired for an unposted job in her office, and then immediately shipped off to a different department, there's no way it doesn't raise eyebrows, and particularly the not going to the Ethics Commission. I mean, we've seen that with other people.
Well, just for perception, why not do it? That's the question, right?
And of course, it opens the question if we're worried about the answer.
Sure.
So, they're going to say, they needed Don Lally. He was so important. You heard it there. He's doing a good job and all that. But I think there's no way that isn't something that makes people say, oh, okay, here we go again.
So I talked to John Marion, the executive director from Common Cause Rhode Island this morning, and he said that they are in the process of reviewing it, whether or not Common Cause is going to take it to the Ethics Commission and file a complaint. He told me something very interesting this morning. He said that it doesn't need to be an outside entity that files a complaint with the Ethics Commission, but to his knowledge, 100% of the cases, that's what's happened. So we'll see what happens there. But do you think that this whole situation caught the Raimondo administration off guard? Do you think they were surprised by the pushback here? I mean, they didn't put out a press release when Don Lally was hired.
They certainly weren't looking to trumpet it, because it came out to the good work of the South County Independent. His hometown newspaper found out that Lally had this job, and then it sparked a discussion across the state. They'd be crazy if they didn't realize there were going to be questions about hiring a lawyer, particularly when people were surprised by Lally's resignation just a few months back. But we'll see what happens. We'll see. Sometimes these stories, they fade out. People aren't that outraged, but there were a lot of questions when it first broke yesterday. We were taping on Friday, and I think there are still outstanding questions about how it went down.
Let's talk about the Paw Sox. Seems to me, as I told Steve Neuman on the first half a couple of weeks ago, was bad week for the Paw Sox ownership group and their push to build a stadium on 195 land. You obtained a letter from Brown University where they said they wanted $15 million for their parcel of land for 195. What does that mean for the future of that project?
You said it right. You said they're taking on water. I mean, it's just the last 2 weeks or so, there have been so many challenges for this project. I mean, the cost, we're now probably over $100 million to build the stadium, because you have about $77 million to construct it. Brown wants 15 for its land, which is needed for left field. The feds want money for the parkland. That's before you get to Providence is saying they want money from everybody out of it to get. So, I mean, this project is getting more and more expensive all the time. And you clearly heard there, Steve Neuman, I mean, he was, as you said, diplomatic, but a sense of like, hey guys, you should be looking at Plan Bs, Plan Cs, even looking back at McCoy.
One of those plans he suggested there was McCoy, Pawtucket, which, I mean, the ownership group has made clear they're not going to do that, and we didn't get into it with Steve Neuman, but there's going to be some big-time costs if they stay in Pawtucket.
Yes, and I think that's a good point. Our people, so much of the hostility toward this has been about public subsidies for private group, et cetera. Well, McCoy Stadium gets private public subsidies. So, how would people feel about a lot of money being put into McCoy? There's a lot of steps to go before we're even really having that discussion. But I think the person to watch right now is Larry Lucchino. He has to decide: is it time to cut bait on the 195 proposal? Look at other sites. Look back at McCoy. Look outside Rhode Island. But until he tells us what he's thinking, which we haven't heard yet, it's all just speculation.
Do you think the late Jim Skeffington, who was really the champion on this project, underestimated the pushback for this?
It sure looks like it now, right? I think you asked about 38 Studios and the hangover from that, and it's so much of this seems like it's colored by the hangover from 38 Studios, and I think it's still surprising to me that Jim Skeffington he kind of poo-pooed that, and not to speak ill of someone who's passed away, but just he seemed to think, well, this is nothing like 38 Studios. And in a lot of the particulars, it's not.
It's not, right.
But it's just large public expenses, and there's a lack of trust about making deals like that. So I think the 38 Studios thing is part of this. But I think it's also just people they haven't been enthused about the project. And so when you're asking the public to become your investment partner, if they don't like the idea, they may just say, no, I don't want to do the deal.
All right, we've got about a minute left here, Ted. So speaking of 38 Studios, could potentially be a big week next week. We might have the documents released. I'll buy the coffee if you buy the pizza.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you looking for?
I'm now interested because you had your story yesterday about the state police and that they're going to be reviewing the documents. I think that's interesting. I can't say I realized that they thought there could be a lot of new information in this from the state police perspective, since they said they've been investigating this for years now.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to know that they think it's something they might find criminal charges, or at least have to review for that possibility. I think until we get the documents, all 20-something thousand, we don't know what's in them.
And we're not looking for criminal charges. We're looking for any changes in the narrative that we already knew about.
Even just so the hope is kind of you peel back the curtain. Even if we have a sense of someone met with someone at a certain time, what did they say in those meetings?
Right.
What was the tone of it? What did people feel like afterwards? I'm very interested to hear more about that.
How good was it to watch football last night after this
it's
offseason?
Back, right? And they're better than I thought. I wasn't expecting them. It's been a little bit of a tough offseason.
I like Tom Brady angry.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thanks for watching the program. Steve Neuman, Chief of Staff for Governor Gina Raimondo, our first half guest. Catch it online, WPRI.com. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.